speakers. We have Rochelle Letau, Ed Fritz, and Danae Zubair. And I'd like them to introduce themselves and get started talking about scams.
All right, I'm going to unmute myself and go ahead and share my screen with you all. 1 second. Up. There we go. All righty. As Barbara said, my name is Rochelle Letau. I am with the Idaho Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. Danae, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, I'm Danae Joubert. I'm the Investigations Manager for the Better Business Bureau serving the Great West and Pacific.
And Ed, how about you?
Good morning. My name is Ed Fritz. I'm the Crime Prevention Supervisor for the Boise Police Department.
All right. Well, thank you both. And I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning. We're really excited to be able to kick this off. I think, were we going to put a question in the chat? Do we know?
Yes. Have you ever been scammed? You've been a victim of it. Have you been victim? Are you a victim? Have you ever been?
I'll put that in the waiting. I'll put that in the chat.
Okay. So I'm just going to dive in, and for some reason I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my screen. So, you know, Ed and Danae, if one of you can let me know what folks say, that would be great. I don't know if you can see it. Does it show up?
Or even if you've never fallen victim, what types of scams have you been close to falling for?
We hope you haven't fallen victim.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, for some reason I can't see the chat, which is very strange, but we're gonna just roll on. Because what Danae, Ed, and I are going to talk about.
Here.
Oh, not sure what happened there, but we are going to teach you how to spot tricks that scammers.
Oh, Rochelle, you went on mute.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, we love technology, folks, don't we?
Yes.
It's a whole new world sometimes. Hopefully, I don't know what you heard me say and what you did, and I didn't say that much. But today, Ed, Danae, and I are going to teach all of you how to spot tricks that criminals use when they try to defraud you. And we're also going to share with you examples of how scammers have used these tricks against Idahoans, okay? So let's go to the next slide. It wants me to admit people to the wait room. It is not, okay. There we go. So, like I said, we're talking about scams and the tricks scammers use. And really, it feels like there are a million scams out there. And Danae, Ed, and I, we all hear about scams daily. We get paid to know the specifics of different kinds of scams and how they work. And it can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming for regular people trying to learn about all the different kinds that are out there. But you don't need to know about every scam that exists in order to avoid falling victim to a criminal. I saw a few of you on the cameras before I went to share, and it does seem that I think everybody who is joining us today knows what it means for somebody to sound like a broken record. And scammers are a bit like a broken record. They use the same tricks over and over and over again because they've learned what works and they use it. But if you learn to recognize those tricks, you're going to be able to spot a scam and walk away with your money and your personal information intact. And in order to try to just make it really easy to remember, we're going to give you guys 6 signs of a scam. We're going to break it down to 6 very easy to remember signs. Some fraud attempts will meet all 6 of these signs. Some will only meet a few. So please keep in mind as we discuss these and you think about scams that you may have encountered before, that something doesn't have to meet all 6 signs in order for it to be a scam. Okay? And I'm going to admit somebody. There we go. All right. Let's move on to the very first sign of a scam, which is surprise. I want you to imagine, close your eyes if you have to, but imagine you're coming home. It's been a long day. You've been, I don't know, shopping, something. You come home, your house is dark. You walk in the door. All of a sudden, the lights pop on. 20 people jump out at you and scream surprise. Think about how you might react. Would you jump? Would you'd be startled. Would you jump? Would you scream? Would you let some colorful language fly? You might do any of those things. You might do all of those things. But more important than how you react, I want you to think about whether or not you would stop to think before you reacted. Because that's what scammers are doing. They want to surprise you so you react without thinking something through. They want to catch you off guard. Scam victims will often report that they were contacted out of the blue, so they were surprised by the contact. And because they were unprepared, they reacted in a way that they normally would not have reacted. Danae, I think you're going to give us an example of how scammers use the element of surprise.
Yes, thank you. So one of those elements in social media, if you have a Facebook account, is you'll get a message from one of your friends that says you are eligible for a grant of some kind. And they may even tell you that they receive money themselves. And this grant may be from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. It may be in the form of COVID stimulus news. It may be from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Maybe Costco is giving some sweepstakes. And you get really excited about this opportunity to receive free money. And oftentimes they'll move you off onto someone on Facebook that you don't know, who will then want you to pay some sort of administration fee or taxes in order to receive this money. And if you do send this money, unfortunately, this free money or grant will never arrive.
Thank you, Danae. All right, let's move to the next sign. If I knew how to work my mouse, we'd all be in good condition here. All right, the second sign of a scam, we like to think of it as hurry up. Scammers are going to pressure you to act now. They're going to tell you that something is an emergency or time sensitive, and that if you don't act immediately, usually one of two things. They're going to tell you that something terrible is going to happen if you don't act immediately. Your social security number is suspended, or somebody is going to end up at your door and arrest you. They'll also say that you may miss an amazing opportunity. The next person in line is going to win the sweepstakes prize, that type of thing. In order to combat that urge to act quickly and act without thinking, we want everybody to slow interactions down. If somebody's contacted you on the phone and tells you you have to act immediately, don't fall for that. Don't let that pressure get to you. Tell the person, thank you for calling, hang up, and then investigate, research whatever they were trying to do or say or sell on your own. The same thing if somebody shows up at your door, a salesperson comes to your door and says you have this opportunity to have your driveway redone for an amazing price, but you got to do it now and pay them in cash or with a check. Please don't do it. Slow the interactions down, okay? Ed, I believe you've got an example for us of the pressuring a victim to act now, or a potential victim.
That is correct. One of our typical scams, we do see this, that tries to get you to act quickly, act now, is a jury duty arrest scam. And we've had recent victims lose in excess of $17,000 to this exact scam where they will receive a phone call from someone posing as a person with a local law enforcement agency. In this case, most recent victim was said they were called by the Ada County Sheriff's Office. The deputy they talked to claimed that there's an arrest warrant for the victim, and an effort for them to comply and not be arrested, they needed to go and buy vouchers. In these cases, these vouchers were actually prepaid Visa gift cards at different retailers. So unfortunately, the victim was very compliant in this case, and they were actually sent to 8 different retailers around the Boise area, buying thousands of dollars in prepaid Visa gift cards at every single one. And in the end, scratching off that number on the back, giving the full number and the PIN number to the deputy on the other end of the phone line. Typically when we see these happen from a law enforcement agency, where they pose as a law enforcement agency, they will make up a common name, or go onto social media, go onto news releases and find an actual name of an officer or deputy that works for that agency and use that. But one thing to always remember is law enforcement will never call you and threaten you with arrest. They will never call and demand payment like that. And so please, if you get that phone call, resist that pressure to act now, resist that pressure to hurry, and slow down and take your time to research the situation.
All right, great. Thank you, Ed. All right. So our third sign of a scam, I like to think of it as what's your number? Scammers are trying to obtain your personal information. This might be your social security number, your credit card number, bank account, Medicare. If it's a number you wouldn't want spray painted on the front of your house, it's not a number you want to ever give somebody you don't know is who they say they are. If you provide your personal information to a scammer, it is going to greatly, greatly increase your potential for being a victim of identity theft. We advise that if you don't know with 100% certainty that who you're speaking with, who you're interacting with, is who they say they are, don't give your personal information to that person. As Ed just said, most government agencies, the police, they're not going to call and they're not going to contact you by phone, and they're not going to threaten you with arrest, that type of thing. Please be aware, though, that you can't trust your caller ID. Scammers have the ability to spoof a number. Is what we call it, SPOOF, spoof. And they can make it look like they're calling from a legitimate government entity when really they're calling from out of state, or more likely even overseas. And the Attorney General's office, we've had Idahoans contact us in the last month saying, hey, we received a phone call from you guys, and it wasn't from us. It was from a criminal who was able to spoof our number, make it look like they were calling from us when really they weren't. If you think a legitimate government agency may be trying to contact you, you are better off just hanging up, confirming that phone number yourself, either in the phone book or online, and then initiating contact yourself, which is what the folks who got these phone calls from the supposed AG's office did. If you end up disclosing personal information to a scammer, to a potential criminal, we want you to report it to the Federal Trade Commission, and you can file an identity theft report with them. You can do so online or by calling them. And when we're done today, one of us will put those phone numbers and emails, or not emails, but the websites in the chat box. Keep in mind, scammers may not just be trying to get numbers from you, they may also be trying to get access into your personal life. So beyond numbers, it's also access into your life. Danae, do you want to share an example with us?
I do. This is also happening in the business world. If you do business with Amazon, Marriott, Expedia, Facebook, that's just a handful of companies whose customer service phone numbers have been spoofed, as Rochelle was saying. And even if you ask Siri, or you're on your Android phone, hey Siri, give me the phone number for Amazon's customer service, the scammers have figured out a way to put a fake number in. So you might get a response back that sends you to a call center in India that's actually a scam call center, and you're not speaking to the company. And as Rochelle was saying, they're going to start asking for personal information that's completely unrelated to what you want to do. Last year, we had a really good example with Expedia. People were calling what they thought was Expedia, ending up with a scam customer service center. And unfortunately, if you give the scammers your email address, at the time they were able to log into Expedia and pull up your travel itinerary and then get the details. You thought that you were talking to an agent who knew what they were doing. And then they started asking you for visa numbers, social security numbers, asking you to buy gift cards in order to change your travel or cancel. And that was very unfortunate for a number of people. So be very careful when you are contacting a company that you're going to their actual website, you're using a known customer service number. Some of these big companies actually don't even have published phone numbers, and you have to use their email address or their own contact system. So just be very wary of searching online, making sure that you're actually using a customer service number that belongs to the company.
All right, thank you. So our fourth sign of a scam is pay up, and scammers want your money. They are career criminals. This is their career. They get paid when they steal your money. And as Ed said, they often try to do so by getting you to buy gift cards. That's one of the ways they do it. In 2020, Idahoans reported losing $10 million to scammers, to fraud. And those are only the folks that filed a report. We know there are a lot of folks who fell victim, were embarrassed, and didn't report it. The median amount of money lost by Idahoans was $295. And I don't know about most of you, but I don't have $300 just lying around that I can hand over to a criminal. Gift cards, they'll try to get you to pay them in a variety of ways. Gift cards are a very common way now. As Ed mentioned, they'll have the victim, they'll direct them to a number of different stores to buy different gift cards. They have the victim read the number off the front of the card, the 4-digit PIN on back, and then they drain that card of the money. We also hear about victims sending money to a scammer via wire fraud. So, wire transfer. Basically, you would go to your bank, they give you a bank account number at a different bank, you transfer the money directly from your account to that criminal's account. We also are hearing about scammers asking people to pay via applications, like direct transfer apps, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. Those are ones you would use on your phone to pay friends and family back for different things or transfer money with your friends and family. Scammers are asking folks to pay that way as well. The thing that all of these have in common is that once you pay that money to that criminal, it is almost impossible to recover it. Ed, I'm going to throw to you for our example on this one.
I could probably use so many different scams as an example here because it always comes at that end where they're looking for that payment, that money to get through there. So one that you're probably not going to hear through the rest of the presentation today is actually a puppy scam or a pet scam. And so we'll see these when a person starts looking online, trying to find an animal to purchase. Typically, it's kind of a unique breed, an expensive breed, one that you're not going to find on your average seller here locally. And so they'll come across a website where everything looks to be on the up and jet, and so they'll start communicating with the breeder, going back and forth, eventually paying the breeder ahead of time before they are shipped the animal. Once again, the payment methods can vary on this. We've seen everything from wire transfers to the different payment apps used. And then once you pay that initial amount, then the fees will start coming on top of that. They'll ask for additional fees such as licensing, shots for the animal, things of that nature. And they keep asking for more and more and more money, going back to the well again and again. And we've had people actually show up at the Boise airport expecting to pick up a shipment of a pet, only to find that they have been scammed by a person and they're now out thousands of dollars.
Thank you, Ed. Our fifth sign of a sign is secrecy. Scammers do not want you to tell anybody what's happening. They're going to tell you you have to keep it a secret. They don't want you sharing what's going on with somebody who might be able to see through their deception. By talking about scams or talking about what's happening, you spread the word and you give others the tools on how to spot scammers. Again, I think, Ed, we've got an example from you on secrecy.
That's correct. One that we see quite frequently is a grandparents or emergency type scam where people will just cold call people up almost and claim to be a grandson, a nephew, something like that, claiming a very hard situation. Ones we see quite frequently are accidents in other states where they have been arrested or someone has been critically injured and they need money to pay for lawyers. And so the secrecy piece comes in where don't tell mom and dad this has happened, or I'll be held in contempt of court and be arrested and put in jail for longer if this happens. And that's what they exactly want you to do, because if you talk to someone about it, hopefully that other person will make you realize what's going on. So we encourage people when these, even if they tell you to lie to the cashier, lie to the banker when you're drawing money, please talk to somebody about it. And so they can actually get another set of ears on the situations and help them through this.
All right, thanks, Ed. And last but not least, our sixth and final sign of a scam. I'm sure you've all heard the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's pretty accurate. And with scams, we also reverse that. And if it sounds too bad to be true, it probably is as well. Scammers are going to claim that something amazing or something terrible occurred. I can almost guarantee you, though, that your grandchild is not in a Caribbean prison. No one is coming to arrest you. And unfortunately, you did not just win $1 million and a new car. Please, please, if something sounds too good to be true or too bad to be true, be skeptical. That can save you from becoming a scammer's victim. Danae, do you want to share a quick example of this?
I do. It's amazing and awful at the same time. With our romance scams, we see this occurring with older adults. You'll meet somebody online and they'll quickly want to take that relationship offline. And the romance will develop over the internet for several months. They will be investing in you, loving you, etc. Except for the problem is they can never meet you in person. And then something awful occurs where they need your help financially and they want you to wire money. Maybe something happened with their own bank account. They're trying to fly and see you. Something happened with their kids. And because you're entwined in this emotional connection online, you're willing to give them that money to help them. And unfortunately, these people are not who they say they are. They steal your money. You never get it back. And you never meet that person that you fell in love with online.
Well, thank you. We really
that
learned a
one-
lot in 20 minutes. Wow. I have notes written everywhere. So thank you to Rochelle and Ed and Danae. And now we're going to move on to the next group, which is the Boise Police Department. And we're again going to hear from Ed Fritz and Detective Brad Thorne.
The mute button found me again, so I hope you can hear me and see me now. Thank you once again. Brad Thorne is also on the line with me. He is having a little bit of video trouble today, but we're here today to talk about some of the current scams we are seeing currently filed through the Boise Police Department. So Brad, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, hope you can hear me. My computer keeps freezing. My name is Brad Thorne. I've been a financial crimes detective for the last 15 years with the Boise Police Department. And any police report that comes through, I review. So all of the stuff that's been talked about thus far is what we're seeing all the time. So hopefully we can give some good information.
So you're getting right into it, because I know we're under a short time constraint here, but one of the things that we do see quite frequently from victims is different phishing attempts. So we put on the screen phishing for victims, and these come in many different forms that we see. And so the first we see is computer pop-ups. You'll just be surfing the internet on your computer, on Facebook, on shopping, and all of a sudden a pop-up will come warning you of dangers on your computer, warning you of viruses, getting you to act. Also, quite frequently, we see cold calls happening where, once again, you'll see a phone number come up on your caller ID of maybe a number you don't recognize, maybe it is a number you do recognize, where it says it's from a specific business, a law enforcement agency, anything of that nature. We do see more so in emails coming up. These emails typically have been through legitimate companies like, say, a bank or Amazon or Best Buy, things of that nature. Oftentimes claiming of account problems or different emergencies with your account where they need you to act on that quickly to verify a situation or resolve a situation. We also see many coming through on social media as well, where it's either just a random message from someone you've never met, or an old acquaintance trying to get refreshed with you and revisit you to rekindle that relationship you previously had. And we also see text messages come through from the form of, once again, a business trying to contact you like a bank, or just a random text message coming through asking you to click on this link or that link. Brad, anything else to share on top of the phishing?
The only thing I would say is what was said in the prior one as well. Make a phone call to that friend who reaches out to you on social media. That usually happens later on after the money's already sent, that you end up calling that person that you haven't talked to since junior high, and they say it's not me. Their site's been catfished or something like that. So always call and check.
One thing that we are seeing quite frequently in so many reports is just that ask for computer access to truly get into everything in your life. And so the typical computer access scams we see come from a multitude of different ways, but typically involve some sort of, tech company, software company, something of that nature. We've seen many frequently from Amazon, where it'll either come in the form of an email, a phone call, you name it. But once you contact them, it'll come back around to them taking you through the process of hitting this button, loading this software and such like that, until now they have access to your computer. We've seen the exact same thing from Apple or Microsoft calling you. We've seen it from PayPal. Recently, we've seen a number of people get emails from Best Buy, once again, with that end goal of trying to get access to your computer. Ones we used to see in the past quite frequently were through the pop-ups, through other things of that nature, where you would actually have an antivirus software company contacting you about problems with your computer, on your computer currently, that there's all sorts of bad things happening, from viruses to malware, you name it. And they want you to, once again, sign up for their services, and eventually you give them access to your computer, think you're signing up for the legitimate business, or just other computer services in general. Brad, got anything to add?
Yeah, these are all characterized under imposter scams, meaning that somebody is just identifying themselves as somebody else. And don't ever let anybody have access to your computer. There's absolutely no need for it. And once they have access to the computer, remote access, they have access to everything that's on that computer. If you log into your bank account there, if you log into your Social Security account there, they have every access to everything you have. So as soon as that occurs, if it does, hopefully it doesn't, but unplug. Best Buy has their Geek Squad you can take your stuff to. Staples does a good job. Get the viruses and the spyware that they've put on your computer off.
Because typically these scams will, once they get into your bank account, they will move money around and claim that you owe them money, that something happened through the process where they gave you too much money back or something of that nature. And so when you think you owe them money, it's actually your own money that they've moved around to different accounts to make it look like you have accidentally gotten thousands of dollars back that you shouldn't have, when it's actually your money to start with. Brad, I'm gonna have you talk about money mules and what we're seeing with them.
So we just defined money mules here. A lot of these scams are starting and originating overseas in some foreign land. And so now to get that money, they need what are considered money mules. Those are the individuals who receive the money and then transfer it to maybe another money mule or the fraudster themselves. And in the last one, they talked about how to do that through gift cards, Bitcoin, wire transfers, things like that. So these are pretty intertwined, all of these scams. And so you may be sending money to another victim who is a money mule. and that money is then going to be transferred to the actual fraudster. And a lot of times what happens is you start out as a victim and then become a money mule once they've taken all that, all the money they can from you. So recognize that if anybody needs you to transfer money for them, through whether it be a job employment scam or a romance scam, anybody that you haven't met in person is asking you to transfer money, there's absolutely no need for it, because anybody from anywhere nowadays can transfer money and they just need to log on to the computer. So that's the biggest red flag there. And then you're going to be acting as a money mule.
And we've seen these happen too with some like the overpayment scams as well. I know someone mentioned that in the chat box that they were trying to buy something online and they received a check for much larger than the amount they were supposed to receive. Exact same thing. They're sending you a fraudulent check, asking you to send your good hard-earned money to maybe another person, maybe them, or whichever like that. But once again, another red flag to look for if you have to send money that you weren't expecting to get from them.
Yeah, we're actually seeing a lot with the lottery scams that you're going to talk about, where you have to send money to pay the taxes to get that money back from you. You know, the millions of dollars, you have to send the thousands of dollars to get that. Well, after you've sent all the money that you can, you'll start receiving money from somebody else as goodwill. It's that, yeah, you're going to get your money. Here's 5,000 for the 10,000 that you've sent. Well, that's coming from another victim and you're acting as a money mule. So you might start out as a victim and then end up as a money mule. Sorry, go ahead.
That's why the perfect transition into lottery scams that we do see. And these come from the typical things that we expect to quote unquote win money from. So many victims mentioned Publishers Clearinghouse. When they're getting that cold call, they receive a phone call. We've heard some from Idaho Lottery. And in the past, we've heard some from foreign lotteries, as mentioned in the previous presentation by Danae, different grants that people will be contacted out of the blue to receive. But also, it always comes back to, as Brad said, that they're looking for that payment to claim it. Brad, I know we've had a couple recent cases on these that you might be able to share about, that we've seen this kind of thing happen where it's a lottery scam.
Oh yeah, the lottery scam, obviously, a lot of times it's the Publisher Clearinghouse right now. And I had one in particular where they were asked to send money via cash through the UPS. And so what that person ended up doing was sending the payment for the tax on the 5 million they won, 5,000, and putting it into a magazine, wrapping it up into a package, and then sending it off to wherever they were supposed to send it. Unfortunately, this person did it 3 times, finally saying, hey, I don't have any more money and I need to get my money. Well, then that person started receiving money, 2,000 as a goodwill. And that money came from somebody in Georgia. And I ended up talking to that person, who was a retired teacher, who also thought that she was paying off taxes for the Publishers Clearinghouse that she had won. So we had 2 victims, one in Boise, one in Georgia, and probably more that are intertwined with just money being transferred from one of them to the next. First, it was that person's money, then it was money coming from another victim, and they were all then supposed to go into a Bitcoin wallet. And we luckily were able to get the money that was sent to the victim here back to the victim in Georgia, and then stop a few of those UPS transactions. Because when things are sent through the mail, there's a tracking number. And if we get on it fast enough, we can follow that tracking number to where it's at and stop it. In fact, an officer just did that and got 15,000 back today to a victim.
One scam that just doesn't seem to go away, that we see reports on almost weekly, if not many times a month, is the Social Security scam. And when it comes down to, if anyone calls you about your social security number being compromised, it's probably going to be a scam. If that phone call continues and they start mentioning drugs, rental cars, the state of Texas, it's still probably going to be a scam on top of that. leading on, maybe that conversation continues further from there. When they start mentioning warrants for your arrest, it's still a scam with that. If they start talking about you need to move your money to a safe account and they're to help you do that, and so they want you to move that to purchase gift cards so that they can safely transfer your money out of your account so it's not stolen, it's still going to be a scam with that. And if they mention have you cooperate so they can arrest the criminals that stole your social security number, and so you're putting up money to help them find that criminal and track that criminal down, it's going to be a scam in the end. So anything that has social security number calls up, it's going to be a scam. So I don't think I can emphasize that enough. Brad, anything to add to this one?
Two things. First, the one I talked about, that 15,000 that we just got back, was the same thing. She was called Social Security scam. Her Social Security was used to rent cars in Texas. I don't know why Texas, but and then they bullied her by keeping her on the phone the whole time, and she ended up mailing that money out. The other thing I would say to anybody who has ever called Social Security, you know they're not calling you because you're online for hours to get a hold of anybody. So nobody's actually from Social Security ever going to call you. That would, I mean, anybody who's ever dealt with them should know that.
And lastly, just kind of talking about different ways we see currently that they're taking your money. I think they've all been mentioned at least one point in time before through the past couple presentations. Very frequently we see gift cards. We'll have you go either buy specific store gift cards like Target gift cards, Walmart gift cards, things that they can spend truly anywhere in the world, or the different kind of prepaid Visa cards, MasterCard, things of that nature. Cryptocurrency is popping up quite a bit as well in the number of scams that we've seen. Another method that maybe people don't quite understand truly what they're doing, how the whole piece system works, and they're taking advantage of that. You know, we can fairly consistently see money transfers, wiring money across the board to different places inside the US, or even we've seen cases that have been have people wire money to places like Thailand for different types of scams. And the one that keeps kind of recurring over and over again, we've seen more recently, was the mailing cash. And I know Brad has a couple of great examples on these, especially the mailing cash instance that we have seen recently.
Yeah, the one we just recently had where UPS was able to stop it because the victim came in with a package wrapped in foil, which was a little bit suspicious. And then they were able to stop that. I don't remember exactly how much money that was, but Ed probably does. But yeah, people will come in with put it in magazines. They're buying sheets and putting cash into sheets now. Just it's never a good form of payment to put cash in any kind of mail. That in itself is a scam. The cryptocurrency stuff that is starting to happen now is scary because once that money goes into a Bitcoin wallet or whatever it is we can't recover it at all.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and so we can see the chat box a little bit better, but we want to have a couple minutes left, I believe, Barb, to try to get any questions that you guys might have about anything we talked about here, anything else that you might have thought about that was kind of on the way. So you can either type it in the chat and we can read it from there, or if you can figure out the mute and unmute yourself, please go ahead and do that and we'll take your questions that way.
I see no questions in the chat right now.
Perfect. Well, we were that thorough, but anything comes up, obviously, one thing we want to emphasize to everyone here is if you realize you're being scammed, whichever else is in the process, whether it's that initial phone call or you just bought that gift card or you're on the way to the bank to withdraw money, please feel free to reach out. The quicker we can act on these type of situations, the quicker the law enforcement can get involved, we are able to recover money in these situations. Given if it's the next day you're thinking about it, it's going to be very hard. If it's a week from now you're thinking about it, it's going to be probably impossible. But the quicker that you can report it into us, the quicker that you allow us to act, the better chances we have of getting any sort of money back to you. Brad, anything else to finish up with?
The only one thing I would say is there's 4 of us in the Boise Police Department's financial crimes unit, and I would encourage you to call us with any suspicion. I would rather field calls, and I do all day, to answer questions and stop you from being victims. And I don't know anybody except for a scammer that if you said, hey, I'm going to call the Boise Police Department, that would stop you from doing it. So please call us. Just even if you call dispatch to ask a question, don't feel embarrassed. This is a $1 billion industry. There is so much money being sent. There are people, my own mother-in-law was scammed. Luckily, we were able to catch it. And I could tell that story, but very, very educated woman who was married to a judge, and we met in the parking lot of Walmart, like a drug deal, because her grandson was arrested for selling drugs, which he wasn't. He was in college. It happens. They're very good. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. And that's what we're here for.
Well, thank you very much, Ed and Brad. We enjoy listening to what you share with us, and we're certainly glad you're there protecting us. And we're going to move on now to our third presenter. This is Sunrise Ayers, and she is going to talk about how to spot financial exploitation and not be a victim.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Sunrise Ayers. I'm the Deputy Director with Idaho Legal Aid Services. And I've been an attorney with Idaho Legal Aid for 10 years. Yes? Okay. So, hopefully you guys can see my... Yes, Barbara?
We're having some voice issues. We can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Sunrise Ayers. I'm the Deputy Director at Idaho Legal Aid, and I have been an attorney with Idaho Legal Aid Services for 15 years, where I've staffed our senior hotline. And what I'm going to be talking about today is abuse of advance directives, misuse of powers of attorneys in order to basically exploit or financially exploit folks, and what you can do to protect yourself from that type of exploitation. All right. So the first thing I want to go over are some quick definitions. Because we're sort of in a legal realm here, I want to make sure we all understand the different terminology I'll be using. So first, when I talk about a power of attorney, that's a legal document by which one person, the principal, gives legal authority to another person, the attorney in fact, to act on his or her behalf. So the principal, when we talk about the principal, that's the person who names another to act on their behalf. And the attorney in fact also can be referred to as the agent, and that's the person named in a power of attorney as being authorized to act on behalf of the principal. So when we talk about powers of attorney, they can be broad authority or limited authority. So broad authority covers most or all of the things that a principal could legally do for themselves. Limited authority is where an agent's powers are limited in time or in scope, such as a parental power of attorney just to enroll kids in school or take them to medical appointments, or a power of attorney that's just for selling a home, for example. We'll talk about competency, which is required in order to execute power of attorney documents, which means over the age of 18, not under duress or undue influence, and having sufficient comprehension to understand what the document is and what effect it will have when it's signed. A durable power of attorney, when we say a power of attorney is durable, it means that it would survive the incapacity of the principal. So a regular power of attorney, once a person becomes incapacitated or incompetent, the power of attorney ends at that same time. But if it's durable and contains durable language, then it survives that incapacity. And then lastly, springing means a power of attorney document that doesn't kick in right away when it's signed, but kicks in after some later condition is met, such as a doctor's letter saying that the person can't act on their own behalf anymore. So that's it for definitions. The first type of power of attorney I want to talk about with everyone is the durable power of attorney for healthcare. So it is exclusively for healthcare decisions and healthcare concerns. It allows you to name a trusted person for all decisions regarding your healthcare, including healthcare providers, types of medical treatment. And unlike a living will, which I'll talk about in a second, it allows your attorney in fact or agent to make medical decisions anytime you're unable to, not just at the end of your life. So a power of attorney for healthcare then can kick in if you're, for example, in a car accident and unconscious. Then your healthcare providers have someone they can contact to help make medical decisions. So it kicks in, when does it take effect? Anytime you're not able to communicate with your healthcare provider, that's when your power of attorney for healthcare kicks in. As far as a living will, that is a document that's often done at the same time as a power of attorney for healthcare, and it outlines your wishes regarding the use of life-prolonging medical care when you're not able to make those decisions yourself. So living wills provide the principal, the person executing it, with 3 choices: to have all medical treatment provided, including artificial life support procedures, to have no artificial life support provided, but to have food and water, either IV and feeding tube provided, or do nothing. So those are the options in a living will. And a living will only takes effect when 2 doctors have certified that the patient has a terminal and incurable illness or is permanently unconscious and in a persistent vegetative state. So the living will is pretty limited about when it would kick in. For the durable power of attorney for healthcare and living will to be valid under Idaho law, the person signing it has to be over 18, of sound mind, and acting of their own free will. It does have to be signed. And then once it's executed, a copy should be given to your healthcare providers, so it's part of your medical record. And then it's a good idea to keep a little wallet card in your wallet indicating that you do have an advance directive like this on file and where it can be found. And there's a way there in Idaho, you can register your living will and durable power of attorney healthcare form. And that's free. And once it's registered, healthcare providers across the state would be able to access it no matter where you are. So you don't have to complete both. If you want a healthcare power of attorney in place, but you don't want a living will, you can only do part of it. Having blank portions doesn't invalidate it. One of the things that people like about having these healthcare power of attorneys in place is there's a section for special instructions. If you have certain healthcare wishes, like you have a religious reason why you might not want blood transfusion, or you have other preferences regarding your healthcare, you can put those in your special instructions. And those special instructions are a way of limiting the authority your agent has, and they need to follow those special instructions that you include. And again, this is the information about the healthcare registry. You don't have to register these documents for them to be valid, but if you do register them, they'll send you a little wallet-sized card that you can keep with you in your purse or wallet so that these documents can be accessed. So one thing that's really important about power of attorney documents that I want to talk about today is they can always be revoked and modified. So if you have done power of attorney documents, whether healthcare or financial, which we're going to talk about next, and something changes in your life, and that person you named you no longer trust, or you need to make changes to it, you can revoke it or modify it by either creating a new living will and power of attorney or revoking the existing one. So how do you revoke it? If you sign a new one, it replaces the prior one. So So that's one way of revoking it, just doing a new one. And if it's later in time, it replaces the prior one. But another way that you can revoke it is by writing revoked on the document or writing canceled on it, or by burning or tearing the document. The best way to revoke it is to physically destroy all the copies. Another thing that you want to do is if you have revoked a power of attorney, you need to make sure you notify everyone who might have a copy of it that it has been revoked. And if you've done a new one, make sure that they know that a new power of attorney document has been put in place. So, power of attorney for healthcare, what might abuse or misuse of this type of document look like? So one good thing is that powers of attorney for healthcare do have a lower risk of being abused or misused by the agent because they are springing. They don't kick in right away. If you're able to communicate with your healthcare providers, they don't come into play at all. And they are limited in scope. They only pertain to medical decision making. So because of those two limitations, you have a much lower risk of these being misused in some way. So I'm going to talk about a couple of complaints that we do see about misuse of powers of attorney for healthcare so that you are aware of them though. So one, we will get complaints that an agent in a power of attorney for healthcare has made the decision that a senior should go into a nursing home or assisted living facility when that is against the senior's wishes. So first of all, if you are competent, then this decision cannot be made for you because again, the power of attorney for healthcare is springing. It doesn't kick in when you are competent and can communicate your wishes. And second, sometimes a medical condition does require the type of care that cannot be provided in a home setting. So you can include in your special instructions requirements about when your agent can decide that nursing home or assisted living care is needed. For example, you might say in your special instructions that you want certain conditions to be met or certification by two doctors. So if this is a concern you have, that is one way to address it, is by laying out in your special instructions that you only want to be in a nursing home or assisted living setting if X, Y, or Z conditions have been met. A second type of complaint we get is complaints from other family members saying that a power of attorney for healthcare agent is not sharing medical information with them, or that a hospital won't disclose information and they have no idea what's going on. So again, your agent that you name in your power of attorney for healthcare generally will be able to access your medical records on your behalf. But if you have other folks you want to have that authority, you can list that in the special instructions, or you can fill out HIPAA release forms for them so they also can access that information. So this is a complaint that we often hear, but it's actually, working the way it's supposed to, because your medical information is not supposed to be shared with folks who aren't listed in your power of attorney for healthcare form. And now, finally, the last complaint we get with powers of attorney for healthcare are complaints that the healthcare agent is limiting who can visit and claiming there's a health reason why certain folks cannot visit you. So again, if there are certain people you always want to be able to have visit you, then list that in your special instructions, and that again will limit your agent's authority. The most important thing on powers of attorney for healthcare is choose your agent with care. Don't feel pressured or compelled to choose who lives closest to you or who's your oldest child. You've got to make this decision based on trustworthiness and who is going to best follow your wishes. So now I'm going to talk about power of attorneys for powers of attorney for finances. A power of attorney for finances names a person to act on your behalf on legal and financial matters. It's effective when executed unless stated otherwise in the special instructions. So examples of ways that a power of attorney for finances can be helpful is somebody helping you pay your bills, make deposits for you, watching over your investments, helping manage insurance or government benefits, and signing legal documents for you. So you want to make sure when you do a power of attorney for finances that it is durable. That way it does last beyond your incapacity, because in most cases, the only reason you would want a power of attorney for finances is so people can help you when you're no longer able to. If it's not durable, it doesn't accomplish that. You can make a power of attorney springing. So you can say, I don't want it effective right away. I only want it to come into effect. For example, if I'm incapacitated and there's been a letter by a physician, a psychologist, or an attorney saying that I'm incapacitated, only then will my power of attorney kick in. You can also choose the scope of authority. So, usually a power of attorney for finances is a broad authority that covers all financial and legal matters. That leaves more potential for abuse and misuse of the document. So if you know you're only going to want help with paying bills and your bank account, then limit the scope of your power of attorney to only cover those things that you're actually going to need help with. And that's one way to combat misuse and financial exploitation. Your agent that you name in your power of attorney for finances has certain duties under the law. These are those duties. They have to act in your best interest, act in good faith, act only within the scope of the document. They have to act with care, competence, and diligence. They have to avoid conflicts of interest, such as, deeding your house to them would be a conflict of interest. They have to keep records of all the transactions they're doing on your behalf. They have to cooperate with the person who's making healthcare decisions for you, and they have to preserve your estate plan that would be set out in your will or trust documents. So how do we prevent abuse of a power of attorney for finances? I would recommend using a springing power of attorney so that your document doesn't kick in right away, but only kicks in. You could say, this document's only going to kick in when I reach a certain age, or if I, or with a doctor's letter, something like that. As we talked about, limit the scope of the powers that are granted. You might, for example, say, I specifically, I'm not including the ability to sell or gift my home. So think about ways that you want to limit the authority you're giving the agent, and use your special instructions to clarify specific wishes that you have. Again, choose a trusted individual. This isn't a time to make emotion-based decisions, but a decision really has to be based on trustworthiness and who's going to be responsible with your assets. Every few years, review your power of attorney documents and make sure the person that you named is still someone you trust to handle your affairs. People's lives change, and you want to keep on top of that and make sure that the agent is always a good, trusted person to be handling your financial matters. Monitor your credit reports and your bank accounts for suspicious activity or changes. If you no longer need access to credit, if you're not going to need to buy a car or a house, if that's where you're at in your life, consider getting a credit freeze. You can freeze your credit so that that no new accounts can be opened in your name going forward. A credit freeze only costs $7, and what it'll do is lock down new credit accounts, and so that they can only be opened with a PIN number that's assigned to you. If you no longer trust your agent, revoke your power of attorney. We have a revocation form on Idaho Legal Aid's website. Build in oversight. You can add in a provision to your power of attorney document that requires reports and accountings to be sent to a third party. So you could name a third party and say, okay, you have to send annual reports of how my money's been sent to, my cousin so-and-so. You could ask an attorney to hold your power of attorney in escrow, keep it in their office, and don't release it to your agent until it's needed. You could name co-agents to serve together. That can work if you know that they'll be able to make decisions together and get along okay. If not, then don't do that. Some quick signs of abuse or misuse of a power of attorney: unexplained withdrawals of large sums of money from your accounts, bills going unpaid despite having adequate financial resources. You might look out for this among people who in your social circle. If all of a sudden they're having bills go unpaid when they previously had the money to cover that, that might be a red flag. Sudden transfers of assets to the agent or to people involved with the agent, like their spouse or children. Abrupt changes to wills or other financial documents. Unexplained disappearance of funds or valuable possessions. someone accompanying the senior to coax or pressure them into making transactions, at the bank or at a lawyer's office. Someone having a new friend all of a sudden who, again, accompanies the person everywhere and is trying to make changes to their banking or spending patterns. The senior becoming isolated suddenly. If your agent who you named is suddenly having drug or alcohol abuse problems, or they have emotional or mental instability, or is becoming financially dependent on you, you should change your agent. If the senior suddenly has a lot of fear, or they lack funds to meet their basic needs, those are red flags. And if the agent is refusing to provide bank account statements or is attempting to isolate the senior, those are also red flags. So if you suspect financial power of attorney misuse or abuse, demand an accounting. We have a form letter for that on our website. Review your credit reports and look for suspicious activity. Revoke the power of attorney. You can request a court review of the agent's contact, and you can sue the agent because they do have those duties under Idaho law. And you can contact adult protection. There is an Idaho code 18-1505 that makes it a crime to misuse a financial power of attorney. It's exploitation. So this talks about having the authority to sue an agent if they have exceeded the scope of their power of attorney document, or they've used your funds for their own benefit, then you have the right to sue them to recover the misappropriated funds. So with all of this, you might ask, why should I even bother getting power of attorney documents? It sounds like they could go awry easily. So the reason why it's still a good idea to have these documents in place is because it helps you plan for incapacity. It can help you avoid the need for guardianship and conservatorship in the future. And guardianships and conservatorships take away some of your legal rights. So we still do recommend having these power of attorney documents in place. Just think through some of the prevention tips that we've given you today to make sure that they're used only for your benefit. And here are some quick resources for you if you have more questions about powers of attorney under Idaho law. And that's it for my presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Sunrise. I don't know that I have ever heard a presentation on power of attorney that said so much to me that I did not know. Let us move on now to our fourth presentation, and this will be done by Suzanne Baker-Taylor and Danae Jobert, and they're going to talk about timeshare scams and industry.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yay?
Yes,
Oh, good.
I can.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Hi, Danae.
Hi.
Hi. So everyone stretch your arms. I know it's already been a little while, but it's been a lot of great information. So what Danae and I will be talking about today, and Danae and I are both from the Better Business Bureau. You've already heard from Danae earlier today, is selling your timeshare without getting fleeced. So let me move on to the next slide. Hello. Move. I can't move
Right.
to the page. But come on, move. There we go. All right. So we would both love to hear from all of you. Do you own a timeshare? And you can put that in the comments section or the chat section. I know a lot of us do own timeshares or did own timeshares. And maybe you want to sell that timeshare, right? So maybe the maintenance fees are increasing. I know that those are constantly increasing. And so that costs more money, obviously. You've lost your job, you're retiring. I know that I'm thinking about that already. So what bills do I want to eliminate? You don't use it anymore. Maybe you don't want to travel anymore, or you can't travel anymore. You don't have any more interest in the timeshare that you hardly ever get to see, honestly, and that happens a lot. It's too far. You want to travel to other places. You don't always want to go where that timeshare is located. You're never able to book time. And I know we've heard a lot of this is I want to go at a certain time of the year, but other folks that are involved in that own the timeshare are going to be there at that time of the year. So I can't stay because I can't get there at that time. Required to book too far in advance. And it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to go or not. And then during holidays, it's always going to be booked by the other timeshare owners. Can't afford the loan payments. Physically can't use it anymore. And children don't want to inherit it, which we know that's always the selling tool, right?
Yes.
Is, hey, your kids get to inherit it.
Preserving a legacy of lifetime vacations. I think that was the sales presentation I was in.
Yeah, and me too. And I went through one of those in Vegas a few years ago, and that was their big selling point was, oh, your kids can inherit it.
Yeah, exactly. So, the bad news about trying to sell a timeshare, and I hate to be Debbie Downer, but oftentimes there's no resale value. We put in maybe $100,000, $10,000. And what people should know when it comes around to selling these are worth pennies on the dollar. It's like selling something at a garage sale where it's 1/7 of the value of purchase. So never purchase a timeshare because you think it's an investment or you're going to somehow recoup what you've put into it. The only real value is time with your family and vacations over the years, which are lasting memories and priceless. But as far as a financial value, that's very rare. The other thing is if you have loan or mortgage obligations on that property, you are going to have to pay them off, and we'll get into that in a future slide. Sometimes you're in a non-cancelable lifetime contract, which is very concerning. And so we are going to have to look into that detail if that's a part of the issue. And as Suzanne was saying, these assessments increase annually. We've never heard of those remaining flat. And so even though you think you're budgeting for $200 a month, you might end up being at $400 a month over the years, which may put a huge strain on your budget. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the timeshare scam works. And how this happens is you own a timeshare and you're probably thinking about selling. And so you get a call out of the blue or email from someone who says they're with a company or a real estate agency or a person who wants to buy your timeshare. They know exactly what timeshare you own, the property where you own it, because they've done their homework. A lot of times they're very familiar with who owns the timeshares in Mexico. Or they are wanting to rent it, maybe for a wedding, a reunion, a party, and they're going to offer you a price that is unbelievable, or you think is a good price. Usually maybe what you paid for it. Maybe they're going to pay you a significant amount for the week to rent it. But you're excited about what they're offering. But then this is where it gets a little interesting. The person who wants to rent it or buy it from you is going to claim that maybe they're working with an escrow company, or they're working with a property management company or party planning company. And there's going to have to be some upfront fees that they're going to require first. And that they might even send you what looks like a real escrow document or a seller's agreement. And they're going to ask for taxes, closing fees. They're going to tell you that there's a notario fee in Mexico, filing fees, and they're going to want you to put this into maybe an escrow account. And what we found is that these scammers have actually established what look like real escrow companies in the United States. They've filed a registration with the Secretary of State's office. Often they take over the Secretary of State registration from a company that went out of business. So it looks very real if you Google it. They have a beautiful website for this escrow company and their own timeshare company too. They advertise an address in a state here in the United States. And if you really look into it, they do not have a competency license for real estate or escrow. Every escrow company in the United States is required usually to be registered with the Department of Finance in that state. And they have not figured out how to get that competency license yet. Or they'll tell you, oh, we don't need to be licensed in the United States because we do everything in Mexico and you just need to wire this money down to this bank in Mexico. Well, again, this is not how it works. And that should be a huge red flag to you the moment you start wiring money, because when you wire money, you can't get that money back. And unfortunately, once you wire the money, you're going to find out there's no buyer or renter and you can't get your money back.
And just to tag with Danae, I've been with the BBB 20 years, and this has always been one of our top 10 scams. And I've seen so many people lose their life savings by wiring money on timeshares. And it's just so sad, so heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. All right, so if we go to our next slide.
So how to avoid a timeshare scam. Never wire money. That's always going to be my number one advice. Never, ever wire money. Check out the reseller. Contact the State Attorney General's office. Go to the BBB's website. Go to local consumer protection agencies, which would also be the BBB, in the state where the reseller is located. Ask if they have any complaints on file. Also search online for the name of the reseller, plus words like complaint or scam. Make sure that you do all of your research on the reseller. Ask about the fees. Is it better to do business with a reseller that takes fees after the timeshare is sold? If you have to pay a fee in advance, make sure you get the refund policies in writing. Ask if the reseller's agents are licensed to sell real estate where your timeshare is located. So that's a really important factor. You only want to deal with licensed real estate agents and brokers. And you can always check those in the state. Go to the state website with the licensing agency to check to make sure that they have a current license. Also ask for references. If you're going to work with them, there's nothing wrong with asking them for references, not at all. Ask how the reseller will advertise and promote your timeshare. Get progress reports, stay in touch with them, and get everything in writing. I know, we all hear that, get everything in writing, but don't be afraid to ask for things in writing, everything in writing. It is super important.
Okay, so how can I get rid of my timeshare? There's not a lot of great options, but because of the increase of timeshare exit companies, timeshare companies themselves have begrudgingly, for the most part, established deed-back programs. So if you own a timeshare with certain companies, you are able to sell your timeshare back to that company. And please realize again that you're not going to be getting a lot of money that way. It's pennies on the dollar, but it's safe. You're going to get your check, and that all the paperwork's going to be done correctly. And it's probably the easiest way to unload your timeshare if your timeshare company has that option. And so it's best to call them. Now, if you have a mortgage on that timeshare, you're going to have to contact your lender for options, because you have to pay off that loan before you can sell it. So again, we'll go over some options if you're in that situation in a up and coming slide. The next one is you can sell it using a licensed realtor. I would hire one specializing in timeshare sales so they can give you exactly what they think your timeshare is worth. They have the resources and expertise and how to get your timeshare marketed to the right people in order to purchase it. The other way is to sell it online or through an open forum like reddit.com. There's a few of these where they have forums where people will buy your timeshare online, and those can be a good way to unload it and get it advertised. But if you're going to do that, you're going to want to use a legitimate escrow company or attorney to help you with the paperwork and getting that done properly. You could also consult a licensed attorney specializing in contract law. Maybe you're in a non-cancelable contract situation and there's no way to deed it back or sell it. You may need to hire an attorney to help you with that situation, but just be warned that that's expensive. And so you're going to want to look into other ways first. The other way is negotiating with your timeshare company. Maybe they don't have a deed back program established, but maybe you can call them and with your circumstances, negotiate a way to sell it back or get out of your contract. Okay, next slide. So here's some options that you may want to avoid. There are a lot of timeshare exit companies. The things to consider with this is they often will charge you high upfront fees in order to start this exit situation. They often contract with attorneys and or they might one of the problems is they might tell you or give you advice to stop paying your loan, stop paying your maintenance fees. And so what would happen is your timeshare will go into foreclosure and you may end up having a ding on your credit history. In some cases, they may come after you in collections. And so it's an option. No one wants to go through that. And so if you can avoid it, we would highly recommend avoiding that strategy. And what we've found too is timeshare companies are now suing these exit companies. And some have been successful, some not, but they're refusing often to work with some of these companies. And so you want to be sure that this exit company you're working with has a solid track record of being able to get people out of their timeshares, and not just by their advertised claims, but actually really wanting transparency from them that they actually have something that works and maybe getting recommendations. Another thing that we've seen over the years is gift your timeshare to charity. You can get a tax write-off. Well, the problem with this that we've seen is that sometimes you'll get an appraisal for your timeshare for your IRS that's higher than what a typical resale value will be. And the IRS will take notice of that, and they will come after you for misrepresenting the value of the timeshare. And we have seen people have to pay back taxes because of high appraisals when given to charity. Also, the charity really can't afford the cost of taking that on, and it might just give them a disservice in the end because now they're stuck with having to get rid of this timeshare. And that's not really a benefit to the charity after all. The other option we've seen is just people stopping their payments. This will affect your credit. It could put it into foreclosure. You will have collection agencies coming after you, and you'll probably be harassed. But some people do go this route. We would recommend other options first. Another option we've seen is vacation clubs. They'll come and say, we'll take your timeshare off your hand if you invest in a $6,000 vacation club where you're going to get discounted vacations for the rest of your life, kind of thing. And what we found with a lot of these vacation clubs is the discounts aren't really that great compared to what you could just find online. So really do your homework if you wanted to go that route to see if it's even a good deal.
Thank you, Danae. That's a lot of good information. So how do you prepare to sell your timeshare? Your first step is to pay off the loan. It is very important that you pay off that loan first. Find out what it's worth. And some tips that I found is you can actually go to a real estate agent and find out possibly what it's worth that way. You can also look at other listings that have been sold on Craigslist or eBay or other websites just to kind of see what the value is of timeshares. So those are just some quick tips on trying to find out what it's worth. Also make sure that you find your deed, contract, your agreement, and any of the title insurance. Make sure you have all that paperwork in line. Make sure that you pay your maintenance fees and taxes. Make sure you're up to date. I don't know how many times that I've heard where, especially some timeshare companies will say that we'll pay your maintenance fees and your taxes. Just make sure that you're paid up and that is being paid either way. Know whether or not your timeshare is legally classified as real estate or personal property. As this will make a difference in how it's conveyed to a new owner. And then finally, check with your owners association or the resort manager. I know a lot of these go through the resort managers to determine if there is documentation they need in order to complete the sale. So what if I
go for it? Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. I know you've been doing them back to backs. All right. So what if I still owe on my timeshare? Once again, this is kind of a repeat, but make sure you pay off the loan. We just can't say enough how important that is. Consider refinancing your loan through your home mortgage or an equity loan. So those are a couple other options that you can look at. If it's a personal consumer loan rather than a mortgage type loan, where the lender takes a security interest in your timeshare, you can probably sell your timeshare, but you'll still need to pay the loan off. I don't know, we just keep repeating ourselves, pay that loan off. You can also rent out your timeshare and continue to pay down the loan until you can afford to sell it. And I don't know, Danae, if you have any more information on renting it out. I really couldn't find a lot of information on renting the timeshares.
Yes,
but
so
that is an option.
Yes, you can advertise on Craigslist or Facebook or Airbnb, sometimes Vrbo, online forums. Just rent it out to a friend, family member in order to pay that loan off. So if you can't pay off the loan, these are just other options to refinance the loan or rent your timeshare until you can get to that place where your loan is paid off.
And always be careful when you're advertising on those sites that you're speaking to legitimate people.
That's a whole other presentation. All
I
right.
know.
So you found a buyer. What are you going to do? We recommend hiring a closing service that specializes in timeshare transfers because they're well aware of all the paperwork that you need. Also, if that's not a possibility, you could engage an attorney specializing in real estate to help transfer the timeshare. But again, that's probably a more expensive option than just hiring a closing service escrow company. All right, so our closing tips, be sure to research the company. You can come to bbb.org or our scam tracker, contact your local attorney general's office to see if there's any complaints or reviews. Give it a Google. I can't tell you how important that is. Put in the company's name and put scam or, government action or reviews and see what comes up. Also, please check the real estate or escrow company license with the state where they're advertising that they're located because it's required by law in most states. And you can always call us. I put our phone number in there for assistance and we can see if we can spot any signs that what you're dealing with is a scam and help you with some tips. So thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, there is a question. How can the children be required to inherit a timeshare? In some of the contracts with some of the companies, they do have provisions where this timeshare can be transferred to your children, but it's not required. So never feel pressured that you have to do that, because when it comes to the probate of your will, you should be able to sell it, but you're leaving your children to sell it as a part of that process. Any other questions?
Well, I don't see any more, so I'd like to thank Suzanne and Danae, and I'd like to thank all the presenters. It certainly was an informational morning. And for everyone that's still with us, remember that next week on Tuesday, we have another scam movie, Catch Me If You Can. You do need to register for that. And then on next Wednesday, we have Scam Jam Day 2. So please don't miss that. And a thank you to everyone. Goodbye.
Did Danae pop off and Susan? Because a question just popped in.
Oh,
You know, Peggy, I do not know the answer to that.
Peggy, we could ask them directly. I could email them.
I had a question about all the presenters. I know everybody's just leaving, but is it possible for me to get copies of the presentations?
I can, Kathy, I can send the slide deck to you, a PDF of our slide deck. If you would like, I don't know if you have a way to distribute those to the attendees or not.
Yeah, like the one, yeah, I'm happy to forward that to you. I don't think I have all of the presentations, but the ones I have, I certainly can share those.
Yeah, I'm primarily interested in the power of attorney presentation. That went by pretty fast. There's a lot of information unpacked there. So I'd like to review it, and I'll probably have a lot of questions then, but it went by so quickly, it was hard to think of all the questions I had.
Yeah, I will definitely ask Sunrise if I can get a copy of that.
Great,
and share
thank
it
you very much,
and ask
Kathy.
if I can share it with everybody.
I thought the same thing, Kathy. I was trying to take notes because so many things that there were a lot of things that I'd never heard before.
Right.
So even this little idea of registering your power of attorney, and the state would give you a card to carry in your wallet. I don't think I ever heard that
No,
before.
I haven't.
Yeah. So wow. So Peggy, is this is your question, right? Are you just selling the weeks that you can use your timeshare? I would think, not that I'm the professional, but I would think that's what you have bought.
Yeah.
Is that week, and that's what you would be selling.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I don't own one, but I was just sitting here thinking, you know, they were talking about